Everyone, another underrated movie coming to you, and this one that I happened to watch today and just come back from watching a few hours ago is called Cinderella Man, starring Russell Crowe, Renee Zellweger, Paul Giamatti, and the reason why I think this film is kind of underrated is because no one really that I know of talks about it so much. It just kind of gets put under the bus. But I think it's actually a really good film, and I think it should be looked into. And for the most part, it basically plays sort of like out as like an underdog kind of story. And it happens to be about boxing, so it is kind of similar to Rocky in a sense of, somebody rising to the occasion and becoming something great. And basically it sort of follows that kind of formula. But what's interesting about this particular story is that actually it's based by on an actual person who actually did go through a similar process and, became something great and someone well recognized, I guess, in the boxing world. So basically the plot follows Russell Crowe's character, who was an actual real person named James J. Broderick. And basically he's someone who starts off as doing well in boxing during and before, because you have to understand that this story in particular takes place during the Great Depression. So it's during a time when things were really down for a lot of people, especially in America. So it basically follows his story, and he's from New Jersey. And it shows a little bit in the beginning how everything was okay. They had a nice house, and he was winning fights, and he was being recognized. And then right towards the way beginning, it shows kind of a transition into how he and his family sort of end up losing that, like right as time passes by, and kind of shows you that things aren't so prosperous anymore, and a lot of people are suffering and don't have a lot of food. They don't have a lot of resources, and the chances of getting jobs are just very, very slim, because again, the Great Depression was a really rough time for a lot of people. And so since it's such a rough time, it's hard for people to, make money, especially in boxing. But once it marks that transition, he's still a boxer until, he has this fight and his hand is injured, so he can't really box so well and put on a show for people. And you'll see the crowd kind of just looks on at him like, you should be really punching, but he can't because his hand is injured. So, basically the top-notch boxing executives kind of go, yeah, we can't really use you anymore. So they basically just tell him, sorry, the buck stops here for you. So, they just kind of wave on and say bye-bye, and you really do, when this does happen to, they call him Jimmy for the most part in the movie. They don't really call him James. But James, played by Russell Crowe, you really do sympathize with him throughout this movie. You do get the sense of desperation that he has, and you really get the sense of how his family is really struggling. They really do emphasize family in this movie as well, especially with Renee Zellweger's character, who plays his wife. And you really do sympathize with him. And I mean, you feel bad, especially when it's just like, it's just his hand, and then these people are like literally booing him. And he's literally in a house where there's literally practically nothing, and he's just living in such poor conditions. You understand. You really do sympathize with him. I mean, you do really sympathize for the people in this movie, in particular the main characters, because for the most part they really are just trying to get by and trying to get out of these circumstances that they're in. And you see how that affects his family. You see how, people become really desperate. So it's not just them, but everything that surrounds them causes a sense of being scared. Like, what happens, if tomorrow we can't put food on the table, we can't have this, we can't have that. It's that huge fear that these people are living in. And this movie does, I think, a good job of kind of showing that. And for the most part, Russell Crowe's character is just very likable. There's really not a lot of flaws with him, I'd say. I don't think that they really tried to make him so much rounded. I think they tried to really up the virtues of him, because they really want you to like sympathize with him. They really want you to get invested in him, because he is sort of the average family male guy. He's the guy who puts his family first. He's the guy that, does things for his family. He's not really doing it for the money. He's doing it for his family. And he's trying to, make something of himself. And that really ends up inspiring a lot of people and inspiring everybody around him. And because a lot of people were struggling through the same thing that he was going through, so they identified with him. They related to him. And I think that's why he's become known in the boxing world, is just because his story is so compelling. And also the conditions are shown by the fact that he also tries to get a job at the docks, like taking really heavy stuff and moving it so it could be shipped out. And he doesn't get picked every day. So sometimes they can't pay the things that they need. And there is this one part where Renee Zellweger's character, the wife, gets so scared for her kids, and is afraid, because since they weren't able to pay their electricity, and it's so cold where they live, because they live along the East Coast in Jersey, so it's very cold, and then they don't have electricity and heat to heat their home, and so some of the kids end up getting sick, and Renee's character just kind of says, okay, we should let them live somewhere else. So she basically gives up her kids. And she does this without Russell Crowe's character's knowledge. And when he finds out, and he goes to these top-notch executive people, these boxing people who basically are the businessmen of the profession, and just basically comes in and literally, he's just so desperate for money that he just like literally begs them, like, just please, like, help my family, just please, because he has nowhere to go. And that kind of desperation, I think, is just very identifiable, probably with a lot of people. According to my political science teacher, we are suffering right now probably, he said, I guess it's just more widespread, I guess, than the Great Depression was, but he's basically saying this is like the greatest depression we've had since the Great Depression. So I think watching this movie now, I think it allows a lot of people to appreciate what they have, and it also identifies with people because they may have had that similar struggle and that similar desperation to just go to people who they know have something and just say, please. I mean, I need your help, that kind of desperation. I think it almost made me kind of cry a bit. I mean, that was a little bit of a tearjerker for me, because I mean, he was literally trying to get money, not so that he could just, pay for something, but so he could have his kids, so he could be with his kids, so that they could be a family together, and not feel separated by this whole Great Depression that forced them to give up electricity. And I think those kinds of things and those kinds of scenes and how the way the actors portrayed things, I just think was done really well and just done really effectively. The fights are really good. He does eventually, Russell Crowe eventually does get some, with his, and I should mention Paul Giamatti is also very entertaining in this movie for the most part. Paul Giamatti, I think, kind of, I don't know, I just think he kind of steals the show, at least for me, because he's more a little bit out there than everybody else. But Renee Zellweger, I think, does a good job of being like that tough woman. But I think Paul Giamatti does a good job of being like that inspiration for Russell Crowe's character, because he's basically in charge of him. He's the one giving him encouragement. He's the one that actually has some money, and he does give money to him to help pay for the electric, so that they can, that the family can support themselves, and so that they can have the kids back. And it's just, it's crazy, just how resignative that can be, because sometimes people can be put in those situations. And for the most part, I think Paul Giamatti does a good job of really encouraging Russell Crowe's character. I think he does a good job of presenting like that kind of funny, snarky kind of businessman. Because Paul Giamatti's character is a businessman. He does work with these like top-notch executive boxing owners who basically bet money, because again, boxing is kind of like a betting sport. It is a money sport, like pretty much any other sport, but it is really a betting money sport. So again, there's a lot of money in it, so their whole goal is basically to make money. But even them, they still have, some sympathy for the people who are struggling. So I think they do try to not make them seem like, that they're only in it for money. But there is that kind of side thing to it as well, as that they're businessmen. It's that whole kind of thing. So for the most part, I can say that as far as Paul Giamatti's presentation, as far as all of the other characters, I think they all work, and I think they're all unique. There's also points where you'll see how there's some characters, and they do try to make this fairly historically accurate, for the most part. Like they do talk about Hooverville, which, if you don't know what Hooverville is, during the Great Depression, they had like these little outhouses that were kind of close to that were, I think, in certain locations, and they were just basically sort of like campground areas where people would just have very little spaces, and they would call them Hoovervilles because the president was named Hoover. So it was kind of a way of insulting him, I think, because Hoover, if you know President Hoover, he really didn't do much to help the Great Depression. He was like a free market capitalist kind of guy, so he felt like that he shouldn't get involved. And basically, a lot of people were kind of angry about this and wanted to stand up. And you'll actually see one of the characters do this. He ends up being a dock worker with Russell Crowe, and you'll see him wanting to, make a change and wanting to do something. And sometimes change doesn't always turn out as kindly as you'll see if you choose to watch the movie. But As far as everything else goes with the fighting, I think that the boxing matches are done really well. I think the last boxing match is just really, really good because they really try to dive into it. They don't make it short. They make it drawn out. I think it's literally, if I'm not mistaken, it's more probably more than 15 minutes. They do try to make you hold on. They do really, they sell it good. I think this movie does a good job of selling you the whole struggle of the Great Depression, and it makes you root for the characters. This is a really rooting type boxing movie, which is technically what a lot of boxing movies are, kind of. They're just like, yeah, really invest in this character and really get to know this area that they're surrounded by, and the conditions that they're in, and see the desperation that they're going through. I think that's just very identifiable, especially having a family and being close to your family. It's one of those movies where I think it's more than just a boxing movie. That's what I think when I see this movie. It's not just a boxing movie. It's a movie about a man inspiring other people and sort of leaving a legacy on the boxing history, on the history of boxing, because Russell Crowe and his performance, as well as the character itself, I think really embodies a lot of that, role model-esque type person of the Depression era. And you do get a sense of what it's like being in that era, and how much people sacrificed, to get, to be there, to be where we are now. I know, this is kind of personal, but my grandfather went through the Great Depression. At one point, there's a boy who's one of the sons. He steals some food because, he's literally starving. There's just literally, they just don't have money for food, and he gets desperate and he steals. At one point, my grandpa stole. He stole a little bit of money. Well, not money. He stole some food without paying the money, and he just went through that whole era when he was a kid. So to kind of have that history, there's just kind of this American kind of feeling when you kind of watch this, because literally America is a large part made up of immigrants coming to make something of their lives. My great-grandfather was an immigrant, and he came during the early 1900s. So to try to make themselves better. And that's really the whole point of this movie, is just showing you that things can get better at times. You just shouldn't give up, you shouldn't, no matter what happens, you should always hold on to yourself. And I think it's just a very inspirational movie. It's that type of movie that can get you inspired as a person watching it. Although, as far as criticisms I can say, they do try to make there's one part where you'll see where in order to get the championship, Jimmy or James or Russell Crowe, however you want to put him, has to fight against someone who killed somebody. They literally show him the clip of the boxer actually killing the other boxer. And it was done, I think, through the head. He just hit his head so hard. And the thing is in real life, according to my history teacher, when we did watch this at school, she said that the character that they made, they made the guy who was gonna go against him, Roderick, and the guy which is the same guy who killed the other boxer, they make him seem like a real jerk in the movie. They really do make him seem like that's the jerk. That's the the guy who's just a very, you know, jerky McJerk. Let's just say that. He's a jerky McJerk. And when I say that, it's just his mannerisms. He's kind of a ladies' man, if you know what I mean. Kind of goes around with a ton of women. Says kind of insulting things. Not really the most likable guy, but my history teacher, she said he wasn't really like that. He wasn't this guy who, who didn't mind killing somebody, They kind of play that in the movie, that he doesn't really care. At one point, he even says to Russell Crowe's wife, are you kind of something to the effect of, are you afraid of, like, being a widow, like, basically, just the most, like, jerkiest thing, but I think that's just to get the audience a little bit more on Russell Crowe's side, it's just to up the drama. That's what they were trying to do, and that may rub some people the wrong way. They may look at that and go, that's just, who would say that, who would do that? But again, he wasn't really like that in real life, so that may suck a little bit out of it if you're a history buff and you happen to know this part in history. The guy that he was fighting against in the fight for the championship, he wasn't really a jerk like they make him out to be in the movie. He was just okay, I guess. I don't think they don't make it seem like he didn't, from what I can tell my history teachers, from what she said, he wasn't really a person, who took lightly, I think, into killing somebody. But as far as everything else, I thought everything else was pretty much historically accurate from what I can tell, because, I did watch this in my history class years back, but I still remember that the only thing that she said was just that one thing, that character really wasn't that much of a jerk. So, again, that's a little bit more of Hollywood. Hollywood likes to up things up. They like to kind of make it seem a little bit over the edge. And it may rub some people the wrong way. In the actual fight, there's this one part where, he tries to hit, I think, Russell Crowe in, like, the balls. And Paul Giamatti just gets really pissed off at that. And it's just funny to see his reaction. But the point being is that what I'm trying to say is that sometimes Hollywood tries to dramatize things, but don't come back thinking that's actually how it was played out. Because sometimes, Hollywood likes to make it a little bit more dramatic. And some people may not like that dramatization. But for me, it was okay, because I just went back and went, haha, it's fiction, That part is not real. But the substance of what the movie is talking about, the things of the Great Depression and all that stuff is real, okay? That stuff actually happened. So, for the most part, I think that's really all I can say about this film. This film, I think, is a really nice film, and it's sad that it's kind of gotten under the bus and nobody really talks about it so much. Because I did like Russell Crowe, and I did like the characters, and the kids were cute, and Renee Zellweger was a nice, tough woman, and for the most part, I think it portrayed that era really well, because a lot of the stuff that they were talking about were actual things that happened during that era, and were actual things that people were talking about, and things you would feel like that it came out of this era. The people do kind of make you feel like that this is the 1930s. So, I think that's really all I can say. Any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them. And, and until next time, tomorrow will be random, and I still have no idea what I want to do for that one, but hopefully I can figure out something for you guys. But, for the most part, it's a good movie. Why not watch it? At least from my perspective, I thought it was a good movie. But For some people, that may not be the case, but for me, I enjoyed it. And any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer. Said that already again, but until next time, bye-bye, everybody. And even though the Cinderella man, you might be wondering actually why is that called that? Because the title is kind of random. They do explain that in the movie if you pay attention. But basically, if you know the story of Cinderella, I mean, she was kind of how do you say, a underdog, someone who was, treated bad. And she rose from that and became something grander. So that's kind of the whole point. That's why it's called Cinderella Man, and it's and the way that the title presents itself is fairly interesting in the movie, but I don't want to give that away. But just so you know, there is kind of a reason, and it's explained. So for the random title, it's actually not that random as you think. It's not like that they just decided, I'll just give it that title. But that's pretty much all I can add. But anyway, I hope all of you have a wonderful day, month, week, whatever, however long you want to hope, or however long you wish, or I wish for you to hope, whatever. I'm just getting tongue-tied here, and I shouldn't do this. But until next time, everyone, bye-bye.